terror can come in even in this relationship that is so special and feels safe, but that's my trauma. That speaking up was really, really scary. Hi, I'm Katie.
And I'm Diane.
15 years ago, we met in rehab.
And we've been besties ever since.
We've both worked hard at healing our addictions.
And we've gone on to build meaningful lives.
I'm a licensed therapist and a yoga instructor.
And I'm an embodiment coach and Tantra healer.
When we get together, our conversations can get intense.
But they're always lively and full of surprises.
Yes! And no topic is off limits.
And that's our show.
Hi everyone, so today we're going to talk about speaking into your truth and
saying the hard things.
Essential
to maintaining healthy relationships.
Yeah, so the story we wanted to share was one that happened recently between us where Diane had been going through something and I got back to her with some long, thoughtful texts and then didn't hear from her for a couple days. And after a couple days, she wrote back and said, "Oh, thanks for your thoughtful texts." And I had this moment of like, do I want to speak up and tell her, when you get a thoughtful text from me, it would really mean a lot to me. Could you just heart it or like it, just acknowledge it so I know that you got it? And what I noticed was all this resistance coming up for me. And this is what we call repression, right? I had so many thoughts of, well, she's too busy, she doesn't mean anything by it, you don't really, don't be so needy. And those are all the rationalizations out of me being vulnerable.
Well, and the self-invalidations, because what's amazing is the things you observed were actually true. There's a lot going on. She means well. Diane loves you. There's, all of that stuff. But the negating of self and your own needs and like the things that, that's the vulnerability, or that's the self-dismissal, and then the repair almost within yourself is to state and ask for what you need. And what was interesting about this one is you kept saying, oh, it's such a small thing. It's such a small thing.
Yes. However, that one of the things we were talking about is that it's really not a small thing. Like all those little things stack up to create resentment in relationships. So I took the time to really self-reflect and sort of bear the terror, because for me it was terror. And what's fascinating to me about that is that terror, I know, terror sucks, but that terror can come in even in this relationship that is so special and feels safe, but that's my trauma. That speaking up was really, really scary.
Well, it's like that
connection.
I feel like a lot of it stems back to like where, when we were young, did we voice a need that went unmet, and like the having to not having the tools or the resources to really do anything about that, and the helplessness and the vulnerability and the pain of the people we love not meeting our needs. Yeah,
and so sometimes even we were talking about especially in your closest relationships, I see it in my practice with couples and good friends and stuff. It's like there's a terror of speaking up about little things, stuff that Diana and I call debris, and we actually have these little conversations about, is there anything debris-wise, because we want to clean up the sides of the street and make sure we're good. But it can be so terrifying to speak up, because what you said, like you put yourself there, and that's a risk, because the person can either stomp on it, like has been done to many of us. I'm sure so many times you get your heart broken or your need doesn't get met. Or you have those special people who go, I see you, I got you, I'm here for you, and she's one of them. Yeah. So it's fascinating that even in this safe relationship, or maybe because of it, it's so scary to risk, because I don't want to do anything to damage it. But then what happens is, were you going to say something?
Oh, just that, it just makes so much sense that a lot of us, particularly women, are raised that when you're a good girl, it's like you, but just to be a polite person, an easygoing person, a chill girl.
Be the cool chick,
Be the chill girl. The cool girl, like you go along to get along at the expense of self. And that means that instead of maybe, it breeds resentment within the relationship, but also at the resentment of not self-honoring.
Yeah,
and so
we were just talking about the self-abandoning.
Yes, and in our last episode, and it accumulates, and then before you know it, you've got all this calcified debris and resentment that's infiltrated the relationship and muddied the waters. And how do you even begin to untangle that?
Yeah, and what we were talking about was how what happens, and this is what I started doing, this was before I chose to speak up, is I started case building against Diane and going, oh, she has time for this, and I saw her, she had time for this, but she doesn't have time to get back to you. And if I hadn't spoken up, that little seed would have grown into something that could have been would have been bad for us. And so it's like the case building is really problematic because first of all, it leaves me a victim, right? I'm this victim of you. I don't want to be victimized by, and
anyone.
Secondly, it's making gross assumptions about my friend. So if I instead ask for what I need and put it out there, I get to see what's real.
And what I'm capable of.
Yeah.
Which is something else we spoke about, which is, okay, the stakes are high, can feel really high in our most intimate relationships, but it's also an opportunity to give the blueprint of how to let me love you well.
Yeah.
And that's so important to get the loving relationships, the intimate, related, attuned relationships that we're most looking for, is to be like, hey, this is what feels good to me. If you can do this, I'd feel really appreciated or wanted or acknowledged.
Yes.
And if we aren't taking those, like the way we do anything is the way we do everything. And if we're not doing those in the safest container relationships we have, like where else are we negating our needs?
Yeah.
And so I just really, I feel like one tip I would definitely offer would be, I know for me, something that has felt like a big shift in our friendship that feels really good as somebody that loves you, and I try to do this in all of my relationships, maybe this is something you can apply to your own, is be a living invitation and a safe place to receive that kind of feedback.
And she's talking about non-defensiveness.
Yeah.
Like that if you can learn to be non-defensive with people, that is such a gift because
Future episode.
Yeah, because she created that space for me. Like somewhere I knew, I think I can tell her this and she's going to receive it. And she did. And it's so funny because at the beginning I had so much shame come up around this because I'm thinking like, Katie, you're a therapist. You should be able to do this. Like there's the inner critic.
Yeah.
But it's like these little things are really the big things. And it's so important that we acknowledge that.
So what I was going to say is it was amazing to me because when I did get back to Katie and I said, oh my gosh, I can absolutely see why you'd feel that way. Pro tip, when somebody shares their heart with you and their vulnerability and give you feedback, being able to say, wow, thank you for sharing with me. Or I can see how you might feel that way, and really validating goes a long way. But wow, yeah, absolutely, I'm happy to do that. But it was amazing to me that after all these years, you were like, you left a kind of a tender, like wobbly voice, like, thank you so much. This was actually really hard for me. I was like, oh gosh, well, thank you for letting me be a place where you can build that muscle and practice.
And I remember what I was going to say, which is that she had a completely different experience. Like there was a whole reason behind why she hadn't gotten back, that if I had known this is what she does, that might have also helped, if you want to share that.
Yeah, well, so it was, and this is another great reason to speak into the hard things, because we create our own, our own confirmation bias, or we have the lens we see the world through. Everybody's is unique. She had her lens, and my operating mode is, oh, I love Katie messages. I have long Katie messages. This is a crazy week. I've got work demands. I've got company in town. I'm doing this thing. Like, blah, blah, blah. As soon as I have some free time and the bandwidth and capacity, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to read my Katie messages, and I'm going to mindfully, thoughtfully respond. Because they matter. Yeah. So I was saving them like dessert, and I hadn't gotten back to them only for that reason. And also we kind of have a cadence of get back when you can. Yeah. But I didn't know she was holding on to that and feeling vulnerable and exposed. And as soon as I did, I was like, oh gosh. And then I explained my side, and she goes, oh, okay. Yeah. But this is such great practice. And one of the things that I really that we really invite too is to, yes, maybe start on the inner circle, like that's in the safe containers where there's a history of being well received, like, like putting yourself out there. However,
the point that I had brought up was like one of the things that's good about learning to do this, for example, if you're dating, is if you speak up and say, you put it out there, and the person doesn't meet you, you get to know sooner that the person is not for you. Like I had gone on a date recently, and we had said we were going to meet around 6 or something, and then he texted me, well, is 6:37 okay? I'm going to do this. And it really wasn't okay because I have a very packed schedule, and I like to be on time. And I said, I'm going to be there at 6. Hopefully you can make it. And he showed up, and we had a great time. And
you took care of you.
It was me taking care of me. It was me putting out my need, and it was risking him not meeting me. And a lot of times people won't meet you, but if they don't, it's better to know early rather than die by, as my analyst says, you seems like you like to die by death by 1,000 paper cuts.
Right?
And when she said it, I was like,
we can all relate to that.
And I was like, could I not do that anymore? And so I stopped doing that, and it's so much better.
I love that I lit up because I've struggled with feeling like, everything's coming out, just really standing for myself in my own life. And I love this idea of the work. We are not victims to anyone. We don't have to be. And the work is actually ours to speak into what we want and need if we want to get our wants and needs met. And that doesn't mean that
we will. Just because you say your need or your want, it doesn't mean the person's going to meet you, and they aren't required to. Like what I think is so beautiful about it is you're not saying, it's not about control. A lot of people are trying to control or manipulate what someone's behavior is. Instead of saying, well, you need to do this, or you didn't do this, or accusing or getting into all that, you can just say, hey, would you mind, this is what I'd like. And then the person has a choice. And what a beautiful thing to give somebody a choice. You can either meet me, or guess what? It's their sovereign right to not meet you. And some people can't.
Some people can't. They lack the ability, and that gets to be okay. But it just means we aren't aligned, and then I get to retreat from or deny access or like change the access of that person into our lives. Like,
yes, there was such a great quote.
Yeah,
I
it's like
if
I put myself out there and say, hey, this is what it looks like to love me well, this is what feels really good, and you for any reason aren't able to meet me there, I forgive you and I release you with love. It's okay. It's okay, but let's be honest about that so that neither of us are kind of doing this resentful dance of too much, not enough, blah, blah, blah.
That's right.
This passive aggressive thing. Let's just be honest about where our lines are.
Yeah, I love that. And we can maybe end with this quote. Anything you lose by speaking your truth isn't a loss, it's alignment.
Ooh!
So good,
say
right?
Again?
And it doesn't say who it's by, but anything you lose by speaking your truth isn't a loss, it's alignment.
Yes.
It's so good, right? I got chills. I got the chills.
Yes.
Yeah.
Send that to me, please.
I will.